Great. And you're off and running.
Okay. Hi class. Hope everybody's doing well. This is going to be our first demo video related to the process of relief carving and printing. But luckily, when we all had to leave each other in the class instruction and go on to online instruction, the relief portion in particular is a process that's pretty easy to do at home. Yes, there are certain components that would be better in a studio environment, and I am going to have demos on printing next. I'm going to put these into sections, but this one's just on carving. So while you guys are away on break, hopefully getting rest, but when you are not resting or having fun, maybe just doing a little bit of your schoolwork, and carving is one of those things. So first off, I just kind of want to explain what I sent you home with, because you're probably wondering what all that stuff is, or maybe you don't. But anyway, this right here is a just no slip mat. You guys all have one in your kit. This is going to be for when you're carving your block. So you'll have your block, which is in there. It's either yellow or gray. I don't know which one you got, but the yellow one's a little easier to carve. If and when after you've carved you've transferred your image and you're ready to start carving your block, you can warm up your block, just so you know, with the sun. If it's warm outside, just throw it outside in the sun for like 20 minutes. If not, you can heat it with a hair dryer, or we're kind of past electric blankets at this point in the season, but you could use that as well. But sometimes it makes it more buttery and easy to carve. Okay, so this will be the no slip mat where the linoleum block goes on for carving. You should also have this tool. I'm going to talk to you about this in a minute when I'm more on a close-up, so you can see all the different types of tools that you can use with this, and how to change out your different heads, which are either U or V gouge. We'll talk about that in a minute. So you should have that, and the blades, just so you know, are inside here. Mine are out, but you can just unscrew that. That's where all of them get held. Okay. And yeah, I have also just really briefly to say that I put a presentation up of the history of relief printmaking, just a little bit, and some samples of contemporary artists. I'm also going to put a Pinterest page up so that you guys can start seeing some of that, and maybe even share different artists that you think are interesting. At the end of the presentation, I had put this book, which was a relief book, all portraits, surrealistic portraits, like what you guys are doing, by a class at Whittier, and it was all flip book. So there's images of just some of them together, but this was a fun project we did before at the college. So it's kind of in the same vein, you doing this surrealistic portrait. It's just, think about something that is dreamlike, hybridization again, something that you wouldn't see in every day, more of like just, you know, fantasy type character, or something just, I don't know, something kind of off the wall. I will show also artists that are on Pinterest that are kind of related to more surrealism as well, and share that with you. Okay, so first thing I want to show you is how to get started with your block. And there's a few things I didn't send you home with that you might end up needing to grab, but it shouldn't be anything too expensive or too hard to find. So first things first, you'll all have your linoleum block in front of you, and if you have a sheet of newsprint or some kind of paper underneath wherever you're working, so that you don't get anything on the surface of your working area. And then I'm just using some Sumi ink. This is like India ink. You could use acrylic, watered down a little bit, but basically we're going to be covering the surface of the block just to be giving it a tone before, so when you go in to carve, you can actually see what it's going to print like. It sometimes makes it easier when you're doing your mark making that way. And so anyway, so I'm just going to show you that very quickly. So I've got this brush here, and I'm just going to do a really thin layer on the surface of my block. And I want to do this first before I get into transferring, because I want it to dry really well. So that when I'm transferring the image with the tracing paper and transfer paper that I had you guys take home, that you're able to see everything really well, and that it doesn't transfer onto the image you're trying to transfer. So I'm painting this completely, okay? And I'm gonna let this just dry while I go in and show you the next part. Okay, so just like that. And obviously it can get everywhere, so be careful. I'm gonna set it over here, and then I just want to show you really quickly. So you can take your own drawing, or you can take an image that you like. I ended up just grabbing a Japanese beetle image that I blew up and I have as a transfer, and I think it's going to be really fun because I'm going to be able to make a lot of different types of textures and marks and make it really graphic. So that's the image I picked there. You can do something like that. I put in your kit tracing paper for your initial drawing, because you're going to have to transfer it mirror image. And then I also put for each of you guys some transfer paper. Okay, and this is going to obviously go underneath your drawing and transfer. So I'm going to show you all of that as soon as the block dries. And I would make sure with your drawing, once you've traced it, make sure it's in pen, so when you flip it over and have it on top of your block, you are able to actually see your lines, okay? So the block has been painted and dry now, and you can heat it and dry it with a hair dryer, which is also good because then it's warmed up again, so that'll help with the carving as well. So I have it completely dry, a surface. You can use a red acrylic with water too, it doesn't matter. For this one, you're just doing a one color black print with black ink, so it does not matter if it's black. And so I have my drawing traced, and it's in pen, so that when I need to, I can flip it over. And I'm gonna end up lining this up with where I want it with my block now, and then I'm going to tape that part down. And you can make crop marks if you need it to know exactly where to place the block underneath. I'm just eyeing it, and then I'm going to secure enough tape so it stays on the table. So I'll just kind of do that. And then I'm going to take my tracing paper, and the side that's chalkier, that's the side that you want face down on your block. And I'm going to just put that right underneath my drawing. Okay. And then I'm going to take with a pencil. I would probably not use a mechanical pencil. You can, but it's kind of sharp, but it might tear into your tracing paper. And then I'm just going to go all the way around tracing out my drawing. And if you need to, you can lift up at any time and see how it's transferring. And the line that's transferring on there, it will not come off. It'll just stay on there the whole time while you're carving. This transfer paper is really good. So I'm going to transfer all of this, and then in the next section, you're going to see me start to carve the block. Okay, and so now I've actually transferred the drawing onto the surface of the block. I can see it all in the blue here. Okay, that's my transfer paper. So we've got all of the lines. So now I'm just going to show you a few things to think of for carving. So when you're carving your block, you'll have your no-slip mat underneath you, and basically as long as the hand you are not carving with, so if you're right-handed, it's your left hand. If it's your left hand, obviously your right hand, you want it behind the hand that is carving, so never in front of, because you'll slip accidentally and that's when you can cut yourself. Okay, so always remember to have your hands behind that you're not using for the cutting. Now this tool, it twists off at the front, and there's a little bar and then a bigger bar think this is kind of, I showed you guys briefly before you left, but just to show you again, all of these little tools that you have, this one's a little blade that can slip right into the metal. There's like a metal slip of thin metal and then a ball joint, and it fits right in snugly there, and then you can twist this down all the way and that'll lock it in place. So when I'm dealing with big areas that I'm going to cut away, or even just detailed areas, I want to actually make a path, and the blade tool is great for this. Notice that my other hand that is I'm not cutting with is behind, and I'm making a pathway. Okay, you always can move the block to where it's ergonomical for you to cut. Okay, and you can make it so you are not cutting towards you too. I'm kind of more in control this way. So now I've made a path. I'm going to also make another path over in here. You could do this for a lot of your lines or work in sections. Okay, and so then you have what's called, you have either a V gauge, which has got a sharp point at a V, or you have these ones, like this is a good example, is a U, and so it's a U-shaped, more curved. The V-shaped ones are really good for coming up close to a pathway. And so now that I've cut a blade, a pathway, then I can go in with my V tool right up on that pathway and start carving away. And I have more control towards that line. And notice I am carving away from me, okay? And I can do this side too. So I'm always moving the block while I'm carving, right? And go slow. It's easy to slip, okay? And to cut areas you don't want to be cut. Again, if you warm this block up, it is much easier to carve. Okay, so you could keep carving like this when you're wanting to carve out a big area. You put the U-shape one in, okay? And then this again, you can carve out away from you. And I'm doing it in sections, but you can get really a lot of big area out this way. If you use your carving as mark making and do patterns, it becomes more interesting because all these little lines in between, they're going to end up getting inked up and being printed. This texture that you see in negative spaces in relief is called chatter. And it can be a really beautiful effect that adds interest to your work visually. So you want to kind of work with this negative space with where you're carving. Okay. And then if you want to get in with fine detail, you have this little V, and you can put that one in. Sometimes these things get stuck a little bit. You just have to be patient and work it in there. So I want to go in with this little one, and because you guys are going to be printing by hand, you actually don't need to go as deep as what you would maybe think to do if you were working with the press. If you decide to go on the press though, you will, during the demo that I do for that, you'll kind of see how you might need to go a little bit deeper, or you'll run a print and then want to carve some more out of the block. But so now I've gotten some very thin lines with this small V gauge, and so any detailed area you want to have pop into the piece, then that would be a really nice tool to use for that. So again, just when you're working with all of this and carving, just make sure that the hand that you're not carving with is behind you, so you're not at all making it easy to cut yourself. And then yeah, and I would carve away what you think before you go too deep, and then run a proof. We'll get into that in the next demo, but so you can just kind of start carving all of your basic textures and marks, and then we will go from there to the printing process next. I hope that you guys have a great week. Thanks.